The flashing lights in her rearview mirror made Agent Sarah Thompson's heart skip a beat, though not from fear. After 15 years as a CIA operative specializing in counterterrorism, routine traffic stops shouldn't faze her. Yet something felt off about this one. She pulled her government-issued sedan to the curb, maintaining her composure, as she had during countless high-stakes operations across 4 continents. Officer Richard Collins approached the vehicle with his hand resting on his holster, an unnecessarily aggressive stance that immediately caught Sarah's attention. She kept her hands visible on the steering wheel, following protocol despite her senior position in federal law enforcement. "License and registration," he barked, not even bothering with a greeting. "Of course, officer," Sarah replied calmly, reaching slowly for her credentials. "I should inform you that I'm a federal agent." Before she could finish her sentence, Collins cut her off with a dismissive sneer. "Yeah, right. Step out of the vehicle now." His tone carried an edge that made her intelligence training kick into high gear, analyzing every micro-expression and movement. Sarah complied, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the growing tension. The dashcam would capture everything, she knew, as Collins began an unwarranted search of her vehicle without consent or probable cause. Her CIA credentials lay ignored on the hood of her car, while passing motorists slowed to witness the unfolding scene. What happened next would spark national headlines and force a long overdue examination of law enforcement practices in the quiet suburban community. Officer Collins had no idea he was about to learn a harsh lesson about prejudice and power, one that would reverberate through police departments across the country. As Sarah stood there, watching him violate protocol after protocol, she knew this confrontation would end very differently than he expected. The truth about Officer Collins's history of discriminatory traffic stops was about to surface, thanks to an ongoing internal affairs investigation that Sarah unknowingly became part of. But as she observed his increasingly aggressive behavior, she couldn't help but wonder, was this really about traffic enforcement, or was something more sinister at play? As backup units arrived on scene, Sarah remained eerily calm. Her years of CIA training had taught her to turn volatile situations to her advantage. What these officers didn't realize was that this routine traffic stop was about to expose a web of corruption that reached far beyond this roadside encounter. And Sarah Thompson, decorated CIA agent, counterterrorism expert, and now unwitting catalyst for change, was exactly the wrong person to underestimate. With lights flashing and tensions rising, Sarah made a subtle movement toward her phone. The next few moments would not only change her life but would force America to confront uncomfortable truths about power, prejudice, and justice. As Officer Collins reached for his handcuffs, he had no idea he was about to become the subject of an investigation that would shake his department to its core. The real question was, who would serve justice to whom? The dashcam continued recording, its unblinking eye capturing every moment of what was about to become a turning point in American law enforcement history. But the biggest twist in this story of prejudice and power was still to come. As Officer Collins reached for his handcuffs, Sarah's phone was already transmitting their encounter to her supervisor at Langley. What the overzealous officer didn't know was that Sarah had been investigating a series of suspicious traffic stops in this exact jurisdiction, stops that suggested a pattern of discrimination and possible connections to a larger criminal enterprise. 20 minutes earlier, Sarah had been tracking a suspected money laundering operation linked to a local business when she noticed Collins's patrol car tailing her. The CIA had evidence suggesting certain officers in the department were providing protection to criminal organizations in exchange for substantial payoffs. Sarah's routine drive through this neighborhood had been carefully planned to gather evidence, but she hadn't expected to become personally entangled in the investigation. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer," Collins announced, his voice carrying a hint of satisfaction that made Sarah's trained instincts tingle. She could have ended this situation immediately with one phone call, but sometimes the best intelligence came from letting scenarios play out. As he roughly grabbed her wrist, Sarah caught a glimpse of something that made her pulse quicken, a distinctive tattoo partially visible beneath his uniform sleeve, one she'd seen in surveillance photos connected to their investigation. The gathering crowd of onlookers had their phones out, recording everything. Sarah knew those videos would soon prove invaluable. Among the spectators, she noticed a familiar face, Agent David Chen, her backup, maintaining his cover while documenting every second of this encounter. The pieces were falling into place faster than anyone had anticipated. Collins's partner, Officer Reynolds, approached with a troubled expression. He'd been reviewing Sarah's credentials, and the color had drained from his face. "Rick," he called out, "we need to talk." But Collins was too far gone in his power trip to notice his partner's warning tone. The handcuffs clicked around Sarah's wrists as she maintained her calm demeanor, watching Reynolds's internal struggle play out across his features. What nobody on the scene realized was that Sarah's apparent arrest was about to expose a 3-year operation involving multiple federal agencies. The FBI had been building a case against several officers in the department, while the CIA had uncovered international connections that turned a local corruption case into a matter of national security. As Sarah was led toward the patrol car, she caught another glimpse of her phone still recording in her purse. The device was transmitting everything to a secure server where analysts were already combing through Collins's background, his financial records, and his connections to several suspicious deaths that had been ruled accidents during traffic stops. The growing crowd of witnesses, the mounting tension between the officers, and the invisible web of federal agents closing in, it was all coming together. But as Sarah was placed in the back of the patrol car, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Through the window, she spotted a black SUV passing slowly by, its occupant someone she recognized from a classified file marked Extreme Threat to National Security. This traffic stop was about to become something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Through the patrol car's window, Sarah watched the black SUV circle the block for the third time. Its driver, Viktor Petrov, was supposed to be 6 feet under after a failed operation in Belgrade 2 years ago. His presence here confirmed her worst fears. This wasn't just about corrupt cops, it was about something much bigger. Officer Collins was still outside, arguing heatedly with his partner Reynolds. Sarah could read their body language perfectly. Reynolds wanted to call it in, while Collins kept insisting they handle this themselves. Their heated discussion provided the distraction she needed. With practiced precision, Sarah slipped her CIA-issued lockpick from her sleeve, silently working on the handcuffs. The radio in the patrol car crackled to life. "All units, be advised, federal agents are en route to your location. Stand down and maintain position." Collins's reaction was instant and telling. Instead of acknowledging the call, he rushed back to the patrol car, yanking the door open. "We're leaving now." That's when Reynolds finally drew his weapon, but not at Sarah, at his own partner. "Rick, don't make this worse than it already is." His voice shook, but his aim remained steady. The gathering crowd gasped collectively, phones still recording every moment of the unfolding drama. Sarah's handcuffs quietly clicked open just as Petrov's SUV screeched to a halt nearby. 2 more vehicles pulled up, blocking both ends of the street. The pieces suddenly connected in her mind. Collins wasn't just a racist cop abusing his power, he was the inside man for an international criminal organization. This traffic stop was meant to intercept her before she could deliver crucial evidence to her superiors. Time seemed to slow as multiple car doors opened simultaneously. Sarah could see Agent Chen moving through the crowd, his hand reaching beneath his jacket. Reynolds was shouting at Collins to get on the ground, while Collins's hand inched toward his weapon. And through it all, Petrov's men were emerging from their vehicles, their intentions clear in their purposeful movements. The tension in the air was electric, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Sarah knew the next few seconds would determine not just her fate, but potentially national security. As she prepared to make her move, she caught a glimpse of something that made her heart stop: a red laser sight dancing across Officer Reynolds' chest. The true extent of the corruption was about to be revealed, and not everyone was going to walk away from this. The red laser sight disappeared as fast as it had appeared, but Sarah knew what it meant: snipers were already in position. As she scanned the surrounding buildings, movement on a nearby rooftop caught her eye. But what happened next changed everything. A familiar hand signal, one used exclusively by her CIA unit. The snipers weren't Petrov's men, they were her backup. Officer Reynolds, still holding his gun on Collins, didn't see the second police cruiser silently rolling up behind him. Sarah recognized the driver, Detective Michael Hayes, head of Internal Affairs, who had mysteriously disappeared 3 weeks ago after getting too close to the corruption case. His appearance now, at this crucial moment, meant the operation was much larger than even she had realized. Collins suddenly laughed, a chilling sound that cut through the tension. "You really think this ends with me?" he sneered, reaching slowly for his badge. "Why do you think I was so confident making these stops? Who do you think signs off on all the paperwork?" The implications hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. This went all the way to the top of the department. Petrov's men were now moving into position, but something was off about their formation. Sarah had studied enough tactical deployments to recognize a classic CIA containment pattern. These weren't Petrov's men at all, they were deep cover agents. The real threat was still hidden, and as she caught Detective Hayes' subtle head shake, she understood they hadn't found the actual strike team yet. A phone rang, cutting through the standoff. To everyone's surprise, it was Collins's phone. His face went pale as he looked at the caller ID. With trembling hands, he answered and put it on speaker. The voice that came through made Sarah's blood freeze. It was her own CIA director. But the words he spoke next revealed a twist that no one saw coming. "Agent Thompson." The CIA director's voice crackled through the phone's speaker. "Operation Smokescreen is complete." "Well done, Officer Collins." The gathered crowd watched in stunned silence as Collins's demeanor completely transformed. He pulled out not his weapon, but his own CIA badge. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She just witnessed the perfect execution of a deep cover operation. Collins wasn't a corrupt cop, he was a CIA operative who had spent 3 years building a persona to expose a network of police corruption. The racist traffic stops were carefully documented incidents, each one revealing officers who were either complicit in the corruption or willing to stand by silently. Reynolds lowered his weapon, confusion evident on his face as federal agents emerged from their positions. Detective Hayes stepped forward, now revealing his FBI credentials. The joint CIA-FBI operation had identified 37 corrupt officers across 6 precincts, all connected to Petrov's international crime syndicate. Sarah's arrest was the final test, exposing the last pieces of the network as they rushed to intercept what they thought was a compromised federal agent. But the real Petrov was still out there. The man in the black SUV was another federal agent, playing his part to draw out the genuine suspects. As if on cue, police sirens wailed in the distance. The actual Petrov had taken the bait, sending his real strike team to eliminate what he thought was a vulnerable CIA agent. They were driving straight into a carefully laid trap. Within minutes, the street transformed into a scene of orchestrated chaos as federal agents intercepted and arrested Petrov's entire team. The crowd's phones captured it all, footage that would soon help restore public trust by showing how deeply law enforcement had worked to root out corruption. Sarah and Collins shared a knowing look as they watched their fellow agents make the arrests. But then Sarah noticed something in Collins's expression, a flicker of concern that didn't fit the moment of triumph. He subtly gestured toward Detective Hayes, who was making a phone call with an eerily familiar pattern of pauses, a Russian military code that Sarah had encountered only once before. As federal agents led away their suspects, Sarah realized with growing dread that their operation might have successfully captured Petrov's network, but they'd accidentally uncovered something far more dangerous. "Agent Thompson." The CIA director's voice crackled through the phone's speaker. "Operation Smokescreen is complete." "Well done, Officer Collins." The gathered crowd watched in stunned silence as Collins's demeanor completely transformed. He pulled out not his weapon, but his own CIA badge. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She just witnessed the perfect execution of a deep cover operation. Collins wasn't a corrupt cop, He was a CIA operative who had spent 3 years building a persona to expose a network of police corruption. The racist traffic stops were carefully documented incidents, each one revealing officers who were either complicit in the corruption or willing to stand by silently. Reynolds lowered his weapon, confusion evident on his face as federal agents emerged from their positions. Detective Hayes stepped forward, now revealing his FBI credentials. The joint CIA-FBI operation had identified 37 corrupt officers across 6 precincts, all connected to Petrov's international crime syndicate. Sarah's arrest was the final test, exposing the last pieces of the network as they rushed to intercept what they thought was a compromised federal agent. But the real Petrov was still out there. The man in the black SUV was another federal agent, playing his part to draw out the genuine suspects. As if on cue, police sirens wailed in the distance. The actual Petrov had taken the bait, sending his real strike team to eliminate what he thought was a vulnerable CIA agent. They were driving straight into a carefully laid trap. Within minutes, the street transformed into a scene of orchestrated chaos as federal agents intercepted and arrested Petrov's entire team. The crowd's phones captured it all, footage that would soon help restore public trust by showing how deeply law enforcement had worked to root out corruption. Sarah and Collins shared a knowing look as they watched their fellow agents make the arrests. But then Sarah noticed something in Collins's expression, a flicker of concern that didn't fit the moment of triumph. He subtly gestured toward Detective Hayes, who was making a phone call with an eerily familiar pattern of pauses, a Russian military code that Sarah had encountered only once before. As federal agents led away their suspects, Sarah realized with growing dread that their operation might have successfully captured Petrov's network, but they'd accidentally uncovered something far more dangerous.